I started teaching on angels, and I noted that in my mind I had planned it to be 4 weeks, and it may extend beyond 4 weeks, and I'm not too sure. I think it's already extending beyond that in my mind. But we're going to look at the subject that is very rarely taught about in the church. However, when you look through the scriptures, right from the book of Genesis, right to the book of Revelation at the end, there is angelic presence everywhere. In the Old Testament, in the New Testament, in the life of Israel, in the life of Jesus Christ, in the life of the early church, you never see a point where angelic presence stops. It continues throughout. And so it's important for us to study this very important subject that we know very little about. We noted last week, that there are many spiritual beings that serve God, and we have noted that not all spiritual beings serving God are angels. We identify that there are beings in the realm of the spirit called cherubim or cherubim and seraphim, and we talked about the elders. There are other beings that I'm not getting into now, and then there are angels. Angels are not the same as cherubim or seraphim. They are different beings, just like a human being is not the same as a donkey, although we are all on this planet. So we cannot say that just because something is a being in heaven, it is necessarily an angel. Today I'm going to go a little further, and I will talk briefly on the function of angels. So this is part 2 of angels. My subtitle is Ascending and Descending. Ascending and descending. Last week we noted that although angels normally are depicted to have wings, that is about the most common image of an angel. We always show them as having wings. There is no such account in the Bible that angels have wings. Cherubim have wings and seraphim have wings, but angels throughout the biblical records from Genesis to the end are not depicted as having wings. People do not graduate to become angels. Angels are a created species, and I will teach on that later on when I talk about the nature of angels and how they came to being. We don't become them. They are created in their state. So we'll look at the phrase ascending and descending in relation to angels, and I will anchor my message today on 2 scriptures in the Bible, one in the Old Testament and the other in the New Testament, one relating to Jacob and the other relating to Jesus. So Genesis chapter 28 verses 10 to 12, and then John's Gospel chapter 1 verse 47 to 51. Genesis 28 verse 10 to 12. John 1 47 to 51. Most of you know these scriptures, so I'm not going to make too much commentary on them. There's a lot to say. I don't want to spend too much time giving you background. But Genesis chapter 28 10 to 12. Now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head and lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. I want you to note that phrase, there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. John chapter 1, verse 47 to 51. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no deceit. Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? Jesus answered and said to him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered and said to him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel. Jesus answered and said to him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, most assuredly I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Note that phrase, ascending and descending. It is interesting that both Jesus and Jacob saw the activities of angels as ascending and descending. I need some alteration with my monitors. Jacob saw the activities in a dream, and Jesus spoke about it in a promise to Nathanael. In both instances, in the story of Jacob and in the statement of Jesus, we see a description of the work of angels. Both are describing how angels function, and they use the words ascending and descending. So let's examine the phrase a little closer. Ascending and descending. What does it mean? When the passage says angels ascending and descending, what is the passage really talking about? It simply means that angels move between heaven and earth. They move between heaven and earth. They open portals between the spiritual world and the natural world. Note that word portal very importantly. A portal is an access way. It's an access way or a gateway, a doorway between heaven and earth. So that phrase ascending and descending simply means that they move between these two realms, heaven and earth. Most of the time, and this is actually something I was going to teach one day, talking about heaven and where is it and what it is. Most of the time when we think of heaven and earth, we think of distance because we think of locations. The moment you think of location, you are thinking of distance. Kumasi is a location. Accra is a location. Accra is not Kumasi, and Kumasi is not Accra. So when you think of location, then you are always thinking of distance. London is a location. Accra is a location. So when I think of Accra and I think of London, I'm thinking of distance. So if you think of heaven and earth as locations, let's say heaven is Accra and earth is London, which is the way it's supposed to be. So if you are thinking of locations, then it means that there is a distance that you have to travel. So when we say that an angel is moving between heaven and earth and you think of locations, and depending on where you think heaven is, it means they cover long distances of light years. That means when God sends an angel from heaven, and depending on where you think heaven is, by the time the angel gets to earth, you might have died. when you're thinking of location. But there are two words I want you to consider when we think about this movement. And the first is distance. Everybody say distance. Or say it like you are in a classroom. Okay. And the other is dimensions or dimensions. Everybody say dimensions. Say distance and dimensions. Now, when we say that there is a distance between places, it means that there is a space between them. When we say dimension, we are not necessarily talking about space. We are talking about different sides. So, for example, I am one person. My length, my height, is it my length? My height from head to toe is about 6 feet. But I, the same person who is about 6 feet, have another side of me which is my width, which I think probably is maybe 3 feet or 2.5. 2 feet. 2 feet. Okay, so I'm 2 feet from here to there. So this is my dimensions. My dimensions. So if a tailor was measuring me for something, he would measure my dimensions. Now it's the same person. There's no distance. It's different sides of me. I hope you're getting it. There's distance and there is dimensions. Dimension talks about different sides of it. Distance talks about the space. Heaven and earth are not separated by distance. Note that carefully. Heaven and earth are not separated by distance. They are separated by dimensions. Let me give you a further example. There is a place called BBC, or British Broadcasting Corporation. It's in London. Since we started using London, let's follow through. I think it's on a particular road that is very bushy. Anyway, you don't get a joke. I'll move on. Okay. So there is a BBC. It's in London. There is a studio for the BBC. It is located in London. Are you following me? There's a studio of BBC. It is in London. It's not in Kokomlemle. It's in London. Then I, Mesa Otabil, and all of you here, we live in Accra. So there is a distance between us and the BBC studios in London. There's a distance. If I have to cover that distance, I have to get a ticket and get a flight and go there. That's quite over 6,000 miles or so. So that's distance. However, BBC broadcasts by radio and TV, that's images and sound. And when they broadcast, there is no distance between me and them. So at this moment where I am sitting now, BBC is here. Are you following me? Now, BBC is all around me. There is news being given. There is pictures being shown right here. So, although there is supposed to be a distance physically between me and them, when it comes to dimension, there is no distance because they are where I am. What I need to cross the distance is an aeroplane. What I need to cross dimension is a radio or a TV. So if I have a radio or TV, what is in London will get to me here without traveling. Are you following what I'm saying? So just think of it that way. There is a difference between distance and dimension. So when we think of heaven, people think heaven is far, 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 far. No, heaven is here. So when angels are moving from heaven to earth, they are not crossing a distance, they are shifting dimensions. So instantly, they can bring heaven to you because they are right here. Heaven is a dimension we live around us. It's all around us. But you have to have access to it. I hope you get it. So angels move between dimensions, not distances. They move dimensions. All right. Now, what do they do when they move in those dimensions? They take requests from earth to heaven. They take requests from earth to heaven. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 16 verse 19, whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. Now, if my prayer or my decree in faith has to cover a distance to get to God, it means that when I pray and I say, Father, help me or deliver me. Let's say you're in trouble and you just say, oh God, help me. And you need 1 second for God to answer your prayer. If it's a distance, your prayer has to travel. Go beyond the atmosphere, stratosphere. Go. Hit the moon, go beyond the moon. Go to beyond Mars. Go beyond our solar system. Go beyond Milky Way galaxy. And go beyond Andromeda. And go. And then it goes through some black holes and goes. By the time it arrives, the thing has already happened. Are you following me? Because you are thinking of distance. But if it is dimension, then God, who is right here with me in this space, in 1 split second can dispatch an answer to me. Angels do not move distances, they move in dimensions. They move in dimensions. All right, so they pick requests from earth to heaven, and it happens in a split second, and then they deliver resources from heaven to earth. All of this happens in split moments. Split moments. Heaven can get into your life before you can blink. Resources of heaven are here because it's not a distance, it is a dimension. That is why the Bible says, we say that God is everywhere. Sometimes people say God is air. God is not the air, but he's everywhere. He occupies all things in all space. The earth is full of his glory. The glory of God fills the whole earth. I don't need my prayer to travel beyond the Milky Way galaxy to get to God. That's why people went to the moon some years ago and people asked them, did you see God? Are you joking? How are you going to see God on the moon? He's not. In the moon is like an architect designs a building and builds the building, and you ask him, when you went to the 3rd floor, did you see the architect? No, he is in the building. He fills the building. His personality, his influence is all everywhere. You don't go to floors to discover him. When you see the building, that's him. You've seen him. All right. So, I've wasted too much time on this one. Let me move on. So, let's look at Jacob's angelic experiences. Jacob had a few angelic experiences. Remember, he saw the angels ascending and descending, moving resources from heaven to earth. All right. 3 experiences. First experience was in Bethel. That's the one we read in Genesis chapter 28 verse 12. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Verse 19, and he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city had been Luz previously. Luz, interestingly, means a perverse place to depart from. Luz is not a place you go to stay. It's a place you run away from. So Jacob had this encounter in this place he should run away from, and he calls it Bethel, a place to actually stay, the house of God. Bethel is a place of worship. It symbolizes God's place in Jacob's life. So when Jacob had this dream and saw these angelic personalities going up and down, he called the place the house of God. In other words, this is a place for God. And God said to him, in this place, this is the land I've promised you, you will go and come and inherit this land. It is a place that shows God's presence in Jacob's life. He had a second angelic experience. And this is very important. Now, if you know the story of Jacob very well, you know that at a certain point he had to run away from his brother Esau. And he went to live with a man called Laban. And he married Laban's 2 daughters and produced all his children from the house of Laban. But Laban was a very shrewd, I wouldn't say crook, but a very shrewd businessman who didn't want his employees to prosper, even if they are sons-in-law. So he made sure that no matter how hard Jacob works, he doesn't make money. And so Jacob had a lot of problems. He worked there for about 21 years, and he had 4 wives and plenty children, and no regular source of income. Eventually, God gave him a means by which he can create wealth. So he had some money and decided to run away from Laban. So he runs away from Laban, and Laban pursues him, catches up with him, and they have some settlement. So I want you to imagine Laban, his father-in-law, is pursuing him, catches him. And at that same place, he hears that his brother Esau is coming to see him. So if you were Jacob, you are caught between Esau coming to get you and Laban. There is the camp of Laban and there is a camp of Esau. And he's in the middle, caught. The thing you feared 20 years ago is coming to get you. The thing that has been running after you is where you are. And he is in the middle of this place. In that space where he feels surrounded by all his enemies, everybody that wants to get him is now closing in on him, God sends him an angelic ministry. And I want us to look at that. He gets to a place called Mahanaim. Mahanaim. Mahanaim simply means the camp of God. The camp of God. Literally, it means double camp. Genesis chapter 32, verse 1 to 2. So Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. He called the name of that place Mahanaim. He saw the angels of God. He is caught between Laban and Esau. And in that place, he saw the angels of God in the place where he's surrounded. And he called the place God's camp. Now, why does he call it God's camp? Because he's saying there is Laban's camp, there is Esau's camp. I seem to be alone in this place, but God says you are not alone because there is a camp all around you. And he calls that place God's camp. The thing is, whether he saw it or not, the camp of God was around him. But God showed him that vision to assure him, Jacob, you are not alone. Laban is coming after you. Your brother is coming for you. But the camp of God is around you. The scripture says the host of God, the angel of the Lord, encamps around the dwelling of the righteous. I don't know what battle you are faced with, but I'm here to announce to somebody there is a camp around you. The camp of God. Mahanaim. The camp of God. Mahanaim is a place of warfare. It's a place where we experience the presence of God in our battles. Mahanaim. The first, God showed him, I'm here with you, Jacob, in Bethel. But now he says, I'm here with you in battle. In Mahanaim. One of the reasons why I'm preaching this message, although I said that it's a subject I've been brooding over for a long time, but it got sharpened on the first day of our Greater Works Conference at the Independence Square. And if you remember the statements I was making, when I got to the grounds, I just felt this is the camp of God. And I felt a tangible presence of angelic hosts in that place. I believe it was going to be a place of warfare, but I believe it was also going to be a place of victory. I believe it was going to be a place where God was going to turn around the captivity of our nation and our continent. It was going to come with a battle, but the victory will be won. That place was Mahanaim, the camp of God. And there are many times you are caught in a battle and you're not sure whether anybody is with you. But I want you to know, when you come to that place where there is an enemy camp all around you, right inside that space, there is a host of God. There are angels of God. They've come to surround you and tell you, this is God's camp, son. This is God's camp, desert. You are not daughter.